Asomaf-All.
Nee, Amosalaf.
Asomaf?
Asomalaf.
Nee.
Geil, so ist
Amosalaf.
geil.
Andersrum jetzt? Nee.
Usalafam.
Asomafal. Oder Asomaf-Al.
Ach so, du machst rückwärts.
Ja, was hast du gemacht?
Ich hab einfach versetzt gelesen.
Ach so.
Mafala.
Mosalafa.
So.
I'm not sitting here trying to like fuck with people. I'm trying to make music I like. But, you know, if it does fuck with people, I'm okay with that. It's fine.
I think the biggest change that's taken place in the entertainment business is the speed with which stars are born.
In America, at least, and probably in Europe as well, there's the cult of celebrity where the idea of doing music seems to acquire a purpose if you become very famous. And then it's like, okay, well, that's why they do it. But if you don't become very famous, then why do you do it?
I would like to think my fans are not idiots.
I'm not really anti any element of music, outside of maybe anti-lazy music.
I'm just demanding.
And I probably was about 13 or 14. This first time when I was lying in bed, falling asleep, and I heard a song in my head. If you hear music, it's almost like a hallucination, you know. If you hear music in your head when you're falling asleep, there's no person to tell you, oh, you're supposed to use that to make a rock band, and that's going to be your career. I mean, there's nobody telling you that. You don't know what to do with it, you know. It doesn't seem to serve any purpose. It's just some weird sound in your head, and you're like, none of your friends have it, so, or if they do, you don't ask them about it.
Let me tell you about music. Music, in my mind, is a form of communication that predates language. It is no fucking joke. Music has been a central part of life since the beginning. And somehow it has been consigned to be this very weird little entertainment device.
You know, I don't want to make it sound like I'm a sadist or anything, but I like the idea that music isn't for fun. I like the idea that it's something more than fun, that it's absolutely crucial and desperate and extreme.
You Could Be Dancing, Night Fever, Staying Alive, Jive Talking. I really love Jive Talking. I think that's an incredible song. Okay, first question.
Are you ready?
That's the first question? Are we ready? Okay, second question. Maybe it was the first time that I went to the radio and found my own station that I wanted to hear. And there was a sound that really grabbed me when I was 13 that I had never heard before. And that was when there was a new song called Start Me Up by the Rolling Stones. And to me, this was like, I thought I had known what music was until I heard that song. I'm like, oh, and it was incredibly exciting to me. And I'm still like, it was like the Rolling Stones presented me through the radio speaker, you know, this big, with some question or some puzzle to try and figure out. And I still feel now that I'm still trying to figure out this puzzle, you know. I think about it all the time. And what is this magic sound? I mean, I remember listening, once I bought Tattoo You, and track 1 is Start Me Up, and I remember sitting down one night with a piece of notebook paper. I was trying to notate exactly what each guitar was doing. Basically, they're going do, 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 do. They're both playing a very simple riff over and over and over for the whole song. And you think, how interesting can that be? But they make it interesting because every time they play the riff, it was different. If you listen to just Keith, he'll play the riff 50 times in the song, but every time it's different. And if you listen to Ronnie, he plays it 50 times and every time it's different. And they never play it like each other either, you know? And so I was obsessed with all these variations and differences. And so I spent hours studying with headphones, trying to write down exactly what each guitar player was playing. Das ist schön. Die Vogel.
natürlich Mineralwasser. Ohne Kohlensäure. Naturell.
We did the mash. It was a graveyard smash, the monster mash. I mean, it's a very goofy song. But when I was a kid, my mom got me this record of just basically all 50s novelty songs. At that, I mean, as a very, very, very small child, I think that's probably all I really listened to was that record, over and over and over and over again. My dad and my uncle were both musicians. You know, my dad had to take care of me, so he would just deposit me in these recording studios and I would fall asleep on the couch. It was just sort of at my dad's weird office, which was this, you know, in padded walls. We had to walk through 2 doors and, you know, everything was simultaneously totally silent or insanely loud. So I started basically like a Weird Al Yankovic band called the Lime Green Leisure Suits, where we would just take top 40 songs and we would basically turn them into songs about people who were mean songs, about people who were in my class at school, and then we would sell the tapes to the kids in the class. We very, very, very quickly had no friends. Like most cymbals sound kind of very pretty and are very rich. I mean, you know, have maybe like 2 or 3 overtones. These have no overtones. It's just bang, bang. It's almost like a square wave, almost. I think the first band I was ever in that actually wrote a complete song was probably when I was like 18 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I played in like a bunch of weird, like, do you know what a pickup band is? A pickup band is, there'll be like a dude who gets a gig at like some terrible fucking sports bar, and he'll just call the day of the gig, he'll just call everybody that he knows. And he's like, do you know these 10 Motown songs? You know, maybe between the 5 people who happen to show up, like everybody knows 4 of the same songs. We would play like 20-minute versions of one song, because we all only fucking knew 4 songs. So I did a whole lot of that kind of stuff too. A friend of mine who I grew up with was starting to be in kind of semi-successful sort of like art rock and punk bands. And he was just like, why are you doing this? Why are you playing this shitty music? Just, because I was writing songs, you know, like weird kind of proto songs, attempting to be songs. But I thought, you know, to be a serious musician, you had to play terrible music or something.
Excuse me, is it true? I face
guys who go out by themselves. It's if they go home by themselves. See me dance alone.
Is it tough to watch Friday after Friday?
I think at that point I realized playing guitar was out of my reach. When you thought about guitar players at that time, people like Jimmy Page or Peter Frampton or any of those kind of people, it just was so out of reach. It just seemed like, well, these are professionals. It would be like if you like to throw, if you like to kick a soccer ball around, but then you see some guys who are like in the World Cup people, it's a different stratosphere and out of reach. And I thought, well, I can actually never do this. And I gave up. So I became a skateboarder instead, which was great. Skateboarding for me was first off, not a hobby, it was not a sport. It was something that I could fully engage in. It was a way of navigating a very tricky time, 13, 14, 15, 16, those years. But in the process, if you're a skateboarder, it is an activity that compels you to redefine the world that's around you, to look at the world through a different set of eyes. If you're a skateboarder, pools are not just for swimming. Streets are not just for driving, sidewalks are not just for walking, steps are not just for climbing. You start to see the world from a skateboarder's point of view, but it was ultimately an exercise in changing the source of light on what's in front of you. For me, that's how I looked at it. In retrospect, I can think of it like this. So, at some point, I discovered punk. I was late 78. Friends of my school were kind of getting into new wave or punk, and there was a lot of debate going on about it. And I decided, and then I borrowed some records. And at first, it did not make sense to me at all. But then, it's like I figured out a code. Like I understood, I kind of got it. Like one song, I got it. And as soon as that happened, it just fell away. Like I suddenly realized this is the counterculture. And this is what I've been looking for. Because I had given up on rock and roll, really. Rock and roll was just soundtrack. In the late 60s and early 70s, and then by the mid 70s, it had just turned into one long cocaine party or something. And we just had given that to the people who made it already. I saw the Cramps in February of '79, saw the Clash a couple weeks after that, and just thought, I can do this. I want to play music. The Rites of Spring, Embrace, Fugazi wrote our first record, Minor Threat, practice here. Everyone, this is our practice space. This is still our spot. Been in here forever. You know what's really interesting about the sound? If you record down here, if you see up here the rafters and bass waves, because they're very long bass waves, in most rooms they just kind of roll around in the room because they can't. But here, I think the bass wave gets caught in the rafters and it releases through the floor. So you get the nice low end, but it releases, so it doesn't roll back around. It doesn't keep coming back around. It's kind of cool. Just natural, and it's really...
There's rumors of war, men dying, women crying. You can breathe the air, you die. Oh, perhaps you wonder the reason why. But wait, don't you worry, there's a new day dawning.
I keep forgetting your question. Because I've always sang, but kind of like a joke, or something. But I didn't, it was also really like all my boyfriends were into music. I mean, not that I had tons, but it was like my main boyfriend he was in a band, that's what he did. And I think I was really trying to find my own identity, and I was and still am so like driven to have freedom and my own voice and my own person that I didn't want to do what those guys were doing. I was just like, that's what all those guys do. Like, that's cool, nice for you guys that you need a singer. Don't look at me. And then I went to watch Yoko Ono play. And she didn't even do anything specific. It was just something broke. It was like something in my mind shifted. And I don't know, like I just remember having this thought, like, I should sing. I need to start singing. I have a voice too. That's when people started to be affected, and I was affected, because it was like and then the band became really loud, and it became, we had like a organ. I can't remember what kind, but it was almost like a piano, like a small piano, where we would bring this huge organ with us everywhere, like up stairwells and stuff, and it had a huge impact. And I was, singing at this volume that I don't know, that just I had never done before, and and moving in a way that I was really trying to like free myself, like shake it all down, like not be this like, I was really into like looking really sexy and little skirts and all this stuff. And I wanted to get out of that zone. I wanted to be fierce and, like a lion or something. I wanted real like intensity. And so that's when things changed.
I think she's one of those underrated artists, and I hate to point out the fact that she's a woman, but she's such a demanding vocalist, and she had a big plate to fill. She's a weirdo. I love it.
The voice is a very, very. It's like been one of the most intense things for me in my life. Because even though I sang for like maybe 11 years with Get Hustle, I always lost my voice. I never felt like I was a singer. I couldn't sing, I couldn't harmonize with somebody. I couldn't just sing in a like quote unquote normal voice. If you were to ask me to sing a song right now, I wouldn't be able to know how to do it. So when you just sing without any effects, like I'm just singing and like it's very similar to my speaking voice. It's not this whole other dimension. And so that's what it sounds like. It sounds very natural.
I think I would have vehemently denied being a musician in those days. As far as being a skilled musician, that was something that was anathema to me, something that was really the enemy. Like people that were too fluid with their instrument, I thought usually kind of lost the visceral, emotional content of the music. About making sounds in a kind of brutal way. Brutal was a word we used a lot of at the time, and it was really a way, it's sort of an excuse to scream. We made these sounds that were just this, like they were like bombs, just. It was just like a kind of way to erase consciousness. After being in art school for some time, I was really disenchanted with the kind of academic quality of modern art. And not that I don't like intellectuals, but to me it was very sort of recondite and specialized, and sort of like studying to be a lawyer rather than an artist. And simultaneously, this thing called punk rock started, and I gravitated towards that right away because it seemed to be speaking about the modern media consumer environment in a really direct way. And I thought that made much more sense as a vibrant art form than some kind of thing that's just basically for rich people or academics. moved to New York because I was involved in the LA punk scene, but I became acquainted with what has since been called no wave, the music of Theoretical Girls and Teenage Jesus and the Contortions and Suicide were pre-no wave, and I just thought New York seemed like a really good place to be. And then by the time I was there, this no wave scene was collapsing, and there really wasn't much support. And the local music scene had become very fashion-oriented there. It was like English dance music or fake jazz music with kind of people wearing suits with thin ties and kind of posing, and it was sort of concomitant in Berlin and everywhere. It's this kind of posing, fashion-oriented music. And so we were like the ugly child of that, the ugly alternative to that, us and Sonic Youth. And we became friends and supported each other sort of in opposition to other things that were going on there. Two basses in the early days. It was very percussive and pretty non-musical, really. It was just chunks of sound. People left immediately because it was extremely loud and they hadn't heard anything like it. And they were just appalled. If they stayed, they screamed at us and threw shit at us. We played with punk bands, and it was more punk than punk would ever even dream of being. It just really disturbed people. But gradually we developed an audience, and then I did my best to drive them away too.
When I first heard Swans in the mid-'80s, the thing that was appealing about them was that they were completely nihilistic in this way that not a lot of other music that existed at the point was. They were really into they were almost anti-music. I mean, their music was repetitious to an extreme. It was brutal to an extreme. It was totally hateful, in its message, and totally against life. And I mean, when you're a teenager like I was, that was everything I sort of stood for. That seemed really interesting. The extreme overkill of the approach of a band like that. Americans need people like me to fuck with them, or otherwise America totally sucks and is totally boring. That's what we do. Professional corporate indie rock. We got 11 stars in Pitchfork. I guess when I was about 11 years old, I decided there was no God, and I changed my name to Weasel, and I got into punk rock. When I started with Flying Luttenbachers, I was 19 years old, and I was very serious about trying to be a musician and trying to be what I thought a musician was, which was, you know, this sort of superhuman iconoclast that, you know, made music that was like threatening and, you know, like fuck you to everybody. And I was like, okay, we made a tape, we gotta put this out, we gotta make a record, you know. So I mean, it was just a 19-year-old kid making tapes and tape covers and selling them to his friends, or, you know, selling them at gigs. I mean, it's not really that much different these days, I gotta be honest. When I moved to Chicago in 1990, I was a student and I was living on almost nothing. I mean, my first job was working at a record store, and I was living on maybe $350, $400 a month or something like that. I was spending like $10 a week on food, and like living in an apartment that was like 5 guys in the space of 3. We were all paying $135 each, and that seemed like a big deal, but the economy was better back then. It was cheaper to live in the city, so we got by, and we were just crazy. When you're young, you just go crazy, and you're like, fuck it, I'm gonna do whatever I want. No one can stop me. When I made some of these records in the early 90s, I mean, it was really just the best I could do. I didn't have any money. We had very limited resources. I mean, I made records where I was like trying to mix in people's living rooms while they're like kicking me out, and like, you know, stealing recordings from bootleggers and using them on records. I mean, I've done everything as far as like making a fucked up weird record. But the whole thing was, when I was young, and I still feel this way, I mean, I was so desperate to like get my vision across that sometimes the quality wasn't really like the main thing, the idea was the main thing. And if the quality was fucked up and it still got the point across, that was a record. So I mean, we were trying to make records for nothing, absolutely nothing, on the most fucked up equipment, with fucked up instruments, but nothing was gonna stop us. I think the idea of pop has to do with structure and creating a structure that people can understand. And I'm not so interested in creating what people can understand, so I don't think my music's really very pop. But it's not noise, because everything I do has a structure. It's not random, and it's not uncontrolled. I'm more interested in taking elements of noise and creating something more determinate with it.
Einfach ganz ruhig. Mach grad.
Wegen dem Tom-Tom? Das ist unscharf.
Ich habe keine Ahnung, was du damit machen willst.
I guess if pop is here and noise is here, I'm probably over here someplace.
I mean, I don't know, people call me a music snob and stuff, but like a lot of people just like garbage and they want like the same stuff that's been done. Or they want like things that are just digestible, easy. It's that like, you know, that like Linkin Park syndrome, you know, like just singing about like the lowest common denominator, you know, like everyone can get it. I mean, you have Los Angeles right there, and you can get away with, you can do anything. Everything is there, you know. But here, we don't have everything. And also, I think maybe in conjunction with the fact that San Diego is a tourist city and it's so conservative, and there isn't really like an open platform for people to be creative. It's like, you know, we have to do it ourselves and figure out a way to like make it happen on our own watch. It's weird because I think over time people would ask like, how do you feel about the punk scene or the hardcore scene? You know, I don't really have an opinion because I don't really see it as like a scene. I feel like it is just a community, a mix of people that all kind of understand each other and relate and get along with each other. Okay, because we're gonna probably be like another 45 minutes or an hour here, and then I'm gonna come over and they want to film some stuff. You think that'll be cool in an hour? We all just kind of like tripped out on the fact that we can like have a message and say stuff and have it be relevant, you know, and we weren't just like regular 15 and 16-year-old kids. Like we were actually saying something that people were paying attention to, and on a you know, a modest level. It wasn't like we were changing the world, it was just a band, but it was like most kids that are 16 years old don't really get that platform. So it was pretty interesting to do that, and it, you know, just again, it was just like we had no schooling, we just did it, and it happened. kind of like wrapped up in that ebullition crowd, and so it was very like political and very narrow-minded, and you had to be, you know, into this like specific mindset. You had to like think this way, and you almost had to, and it turned out you had to look a certain way too. I mean, it was down to like you had to be accepted on their terms.
Us being labeled as a hardcore band is interesting because I mean, there's only a handful of like technically labeled hardcore bands that I would listen to. You know, I think that you know, you look at any of our record collections, and it's you know, the whole spectrum right there of music.
So yeah, you just make it your own, and the idea of scene and being able to like just blur it and take whatever you want, and I just wish more people did that, I suppose. Kind of like did something and then added to it and took from it and made it, and it eventually like grew into this thing, mutated, I guess, into this thing. And then in retrospect you go, oh shit, like kind of just like did something weird and different, and then all the critics can call it what they want, you know? I mean, I don't think I think ultimately our goal was to just like make something different and unique that we could appreciate ourselves.
Okay, I got something. I hope I still have this record. You guys will love this actually. First time I ever met Ian. There you go. That's his autograph. I was 14, or maybe 13.
I mean, people say, what's punk? Punk is the free space. That's the space where new ideas are presented, where profit doesn't dictate how they are presented. Stuff. This is Fugazi's for years, and then I recorded Even's records and also Antelope records and Joe Lally records here. I've heard this a lot, like you're very controlling. I think really what I'm interested in is it's not so much being in control, it's not ceding control. That if you just play by other people's rules, then they're in control. And their interests are usually, I would say, not constructive. You know, I like to be thoughtful about what I do. It could be controlling, I don't know. I don't know. I just think it's thoughtful. I just like to think about things. So we decided to start we figured out how to make a record. It took us months. In that time period, Minor Threat formed and Henry's band SOA formed, and there was a band called, Government Issue showed up, and all these other bands started to show up. So we said, if any money comes back from the sale of these records, all that money would go to putting out another local, our friends' bands. We just want to document our scene. Like at that time, it's a very small scene. We just want to put out our own records of our friends' bands. And that's really how it became a label.
I guess I'm a person who runs a record label. If you want to call it a record label, it's barely a record label. The label exists to document stuff nobody else has the balls to document that I like.
I don't know what a good label can do now. I mean, I think record labels, it's a moribund, if not dead, enterprise.
You're asking the wrong person. We have all this stuff we can't sell.
I just try to put out good shit and not lose money. I mean, that's good enough for me.
It's a business, and so unfortunately for me or for 31G, the business side of it always kind of took the back seat, and we just went the artistic route. So I think that honesty and just paying a good royalty and paying an honest royalty are the main things that I would suggest.
I usually release music if I want to listen to something 100 times. I think that's good enough to release.
I'm not interested in just putting out a record for a band on a speculative basis, meaning putting the record out so that maybe they can become popular or they can get a fan. I'm interested in them writing music that demands fans, that makes music that people have to hear. That's what I want. I want to see that. And then I want to document it. I want to take that picture. So it's a challenge.
I'm not making any of this stuff to destroy other stuff. I'm making it so that it exists. When I spend all this time doing this stuff, it's because I care. It's not because I don't care. It's not because I'm I'm just gonna fart and put another record out. I mean, I can't be held responsible for people's bad taste.
Just dance, 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 dance.
Miley Cyrus?
Just dance, 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 dance. I'm in the club. I've got some money. I've got all these people that are attracted to me. Here I go. I've got more money. Now I'm drunk and I'm dancing, 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 dancing.
My record label is certainly on hold because after a series of disappointments, in investing lots of money and lots of time in artists whom I love, and seeing that the records don't sell because people don't buy.
Before I didn't really consider the financial aspects to it, and now I have to because we're further and further into debt, and then also the changing industry. It's we can't really sell a CD, which is really cheap to manufacture. So we were, dealing with these obstacles, I suppose, that initially we didn't have.
My friends that run independent labels, I'm just wishing them the best because I think they're up against incredible odds to make their business succeed, because their business model includes people purchasing music, and it's just not happening.
So I can't see it continuing. Some people have figured it out, I guess, how to do it, But there's no, even with me, I have no staff. I do almost everything except accounting. And that's the only way I've been able to survive. If I hired people, forget it. It'd be stupid. So even that, though, is not working.
Right now, I don't see how money is to be made for anyone as far as independent music goes.
The struggle is to pay your rent. The struggle is to eat. The struggle is to not go crazy. The struggle is to not die. I mean, I've faced all those things at one point. I'm in a position now where I'm not really interested in being a martyr and getting like pity about it. But I mean, everybody's got expectations of what they want their life to be. I mean, some of our expectations are more unrealistic than others.
To send out demo tapes like all the time to like various labels like that, you know, that I was like fans of like stuff they put out, and like, yeah, like I never, you know, it was really hard to find people to like wanna put out stuff. Now, I don't know, I guess it all depends on like what it is. I mean, you know, I've got a lot of stuff that, you know, I would love to put out that, you know, I don't have a label for. If I put out like 10 records in 1 year, I'll make more off of that than I would if I went out for like 10 weeks on tour. I kind of did it, you know, just because like I needed extra money, you know, and I had like a lot of records I was like sitting on that I didn't have labels. So I was just like, well, you know, like I was trying to find a job and I couldn't find a job. And I was like, well, I'll just put this out this month. And then I put it out, like I sold, you know, like maybe 75 copies online. And yeah, and then like that was like my rent. And then I paid my rent. And then I did that again the next month, you know. It would be nice to like be able to like make more off of music, but I don't think it'd be hard for me to make a living off of doing music exactly how I want to do it. So I think that like, you know, I would either have to compromise a lot in music, and I could do that, or I could try that, or else I could just you know, actually keep doing music how I want to do it, and then just work a job, you know.
I don't really think that compromise is a good idea in music.
The music's only going to be as crazy as the ability of the musicians to figure out how the fuck to keep existing and spending all their time working on this crazy stuff. So part of the struggle now is not, for me, not to like, you know, just eat and live in an apartment. The challenge now is how do I make crazier, more fucked up, insane music that's complicated and takes a lot of time to make and is really hard to play, and I'm working on it, but you know, it's not easy right now. I mean, no one's really paying me, so I mean, it's not really that easy to do. So that was a long answer.
I actually once made a list of how many jobs I had, just different jobs, like, you know, like where I like worked for one day and quit and stuff like that. And I think I had a list of over 65. What is it? Sorry.
It's a choice, you know, and I think if you're open to it, then you'll find it, and you can, you know, be strengthened by it as well. I think it's just a matter of awareness and like opening your eyes to this kind of thing. Initially, when most kids get into music, there's this kind of magical aura that surrounds the people that you look up to, other musicians. You're kind of on the outside looking in, and but music is is for everyone, and you know, anyone can do it, and I don't feel like that there is an illusion or a mystery to making it when you realize that you can do it yourself, you know, that you can put on shows yourself, you can be in a band yourself, you can put out records by your friends or whatnot, then it's pretty empowering, and it's really special. Yeah, scene, whatever. It's a. I think New York is ultimately a smaller scene than people think. You know, the amount of people that are doing things. There's an ebb and flow. There's a tide of people that you know that come and go. Being a creative person and being in a band, being a part of something is that you attract other people that are doing dynamic things, that are also making things too. Finding a community and finding a balance, and finding the best fit for playing a show. And that's, for me, generally is an all ages DIY kind of situation. Because there are a lot of venues in New York, and there are a lot of shitty bars, and a lot of bars that ultimately charge the musicians to play there. You know, it's this idea that it's a privilege for you as a band to perform at a space, and that it's your responsibility to bring enough people so that they can make money off of you at the bar. The kinds of shows that they have here are not dictated by commercial interests. You know, the programming is essentially whatever Eden and the people involved want, and it's very democratic, and also gives the opportunity to a lot of smaller touring experimental bands to have some place to play, and a place where people can come see all ages shows that are affordable and discover new music. So it's like, you want to play for a bunch of bored people that are getting off work and they really just want to drink and they don't want to be bothered by the band, or do you want to play for a mix of all kinds of people that are there because they're interested in seeing the music?
funny enough, I started listening to hip hop early, like I said, 14 or so, 15, and I was a huge fan. Like at one point, like it was neck and neck. Like I was just going to hip hop shows, hardcore shows, and dancehall shows every night, and it was cool in New York at those times. It wasn't segregated. Like it became like half the people at CB's you would see at the tunnel at the hip hop show, you know, and then when you went to the dancehall show, all the guys from the hip hop show and the hardcore shows were there. So it was a small network. It wasn't like how Berlin is, like I'm only into rockabilly, I'm only into hardcore, I'm only into hip hop, and even that I'm only into crunk, or I'm only into backpacker, It wasn't like that. Back then it was like there was MTV and there was New York City, and like New York City was representing, for me, was immigrant culture, underdog culture, social, like lower social class culture, all races, all religions, all creeds. It was representative of what I thought America was supposed to be, you know? There's good aggression and there's bad aggression, I guess. I think there's this natural youth aggression that everybody has. And I think when you put punk and hip hop and dancehall into that situation, and then you put New York City into the equation, you're just gonna get a monster, you know what I mean? And that's what Dälek really was for me. It was like a way to exercise the demons, kinda, you know?
Broke striders, lots of men realize their deep deceit. This trouble in advance of half-ass crews crowd these streets. Never mind who I am, son, just listen when I speak. Broken paragraphs, whole rap of 100 million deep. Bleak circumstance led masses to only wanna dance. A bastard child of Reaganomics posed in a b-boy stance. Deemed evil by those housed in church steeples. False prophets read backwards from broken tablets to the feeble. I seem take their lies. I buy my time exposing ancient swine. Petty crew left this mark on this hasty scribe. If stars align, I suppose even the blind will see how they stole the last voice, corrupted culture into industry. Few minutes remain, a tame soul wanders wild when it dreams. Mine are filled with ill visions and certain dope things. These slick wrists won't rest till I spill these last drops. Torn his skin, only sin when I awoke on sidewalk.
I was really naive, and I thought like, man, you know, we love the Cro-Mags and we love Bad Brains, but we love Velvet Underground and the Stooges, and we love Bambaataa, and we love Public Enemy and Gangstar, and we love King Tubby. I mean, you know, all the stuff that everybody loves, we loved, and we really thought like trying our best to put all these things into one sound that the world was just going to accept it and be into it. And we found very early on that like people were threatened, people were afraid, people were like offended. I remember a girl crying in Tampa, Florida, asking if we were crazy after the show, and the weird stuff, you know. And like I think people identify with their music, you know, and I think people are very insecure and they hide behind figures and things, you know. That's why people join movements of any kind. I think people need a sense of belonging, and when you start coming in and fucking with people's sense of where they belong or their identity, I think people get really offended by that, you know. I hated my generation when we were coming up with Dälek. That's why we sounded like that. You know, we were angry. Everybody was so married to these notions on what music should be and how it should be done, and what we were doing wasn't real, and there wasn't enough performance in it, or there wasn't enough musicianship in it, and we were just like, we don't want any musicianship in our sound. We don't want any performance in our sound. We just want this sound to come out of nowhere so you're not lost inside the performance. Everybody in America, especially, so married to watching the drummer, watching the guitar player. At least out here, you guys had sound system culture from the Jamaican influence or whatever, from the Kraftwerk days or whatever. So you understood, like, you don't even need to see the DJ. Just go in the room and experience the sound. Let the system do the talking, you know? But a lot of people in our age group, unfortunately, like, gave up and just submitted and just believed these weird notions on what things should be and what's correct. And I think what's great about the youth is that they're coming in, just like we did to the previous generation, these new guys are showing us like, dude, everything's legit, man. Legitimacy isn't in the technology or in the gear. The legitimacy is in how you express yourself and what you say with it, you know?
Being being born in America, which is a European kind of monopoly of like how to make the world better or worse or create new world order. It's very pyramid triangle based. All these stolen mythologies, you know?
At least asleep, punch?
When I was a kid, it was nobody made music, only adults. Kids didn't make music because you couldn't buy the gear. Computers weren't cheap. There was no computers, actually. You know, you had to buy samplers or keyboards or, you know, get a drummer or, you know, you had to be in a band or you couldn't just buy, you know, but now kids are just, it's easy for them, you know? I loved everything. I was a tree hugger or a music hugger. Chinese spaghetti pop, Miami bass, Norwegian yodeling. I like the click-tock music. Like I loved Eazy-E to freaking Mr. Bungle to, you know, my mom put on Eric Clapton and I was drunk. I'd do the electric boogie to that shit, you know? Britney Spears, Eazy-E and Britney Spears should have sex. I make so many different types of music, and every day a new alien comes into my brain and changes everything. The sound could be completely, it can make you go like, you know? I like when sound does that. We kind of work a little bit pigeonholed into the, like, electronic music of Miami, and at that time there wasn't any really. It was mainly drum and bass. Miami, when I first released my first record was in 1998, and it was a 12-inch and nobody liked it because it wasn't a pop kind of structured blueprint record that you could easily play in front of a big crowd. It was more of a record that we took a chance, you know, we got experimental, and that's the music we made. We didn't, you know, that's what we loved. So we released it and got really bad reviews in Miami. But through those bad reviews, Schematic was like, dude, you guys, this is awesome. Miami is 10 years behind schedule. The world needs to see this.
El Señor con Gira, la primera esperanza, canta lo clásico.
It's not like your typical club music or your typical, you know, noise or band music or rock. A lot of people have told me that, like, oh, I heard your shit and I hated it, you suck. But then I heard it, you know, 3 years later or 10 years later, and I was blown away.
That's just the way music goes. I mean, what people thought was complete noise and shit 30 years ago now sounds just like good old rock and roll, right? So I'm just part of that.
rock and roll, jazz, all of these genres are old now. Maybe it's not as easy to make quality versions from these genres after so much has already been made, you know, without sounding derivative and boring.
Everybody has a gun, everybody has a knife. Everybody has a gun, everybody has a knife. Everybody has a gun, everybody has a knife.
In the past, it definitely was not encouraged for women to make loud music. In the past, I think a lot of women are too shy to make any sort of aggressive music or to take, a lot of it is taking musical chances. Used to be very, very self-conscious because it was such new territory. Meeting Bianca and Ellie and Sarah, they were all very brave women, very musically accomplished women, which in the past it had been very difficult for me to find other women to play with. I mostly played with guys, as did all of them. It's just... It's like still a really cool instrument. You don't even have to be playing it, right? You know what I mean? So yeah, I super love the trumpet. I super love the broken trumpet. It always surprised me and my bandmates that we would be the only women, not only the only all-female band, but the only women at all on many festivals that we played. But looking back, I think the more puzzling thing would be that we were interested in it, because it was very unusual. And especially with noise music, more experimental music, atonal music, it's not very appealing to women to play that, I think, and I think we're just weird.
I won't let it run my
Race Errata is a loud band. It's a fast band. My lyrics often have hints of anger at certain political situations. It also came at a very transitional time in the Bay Area as far as the housing prices, rents and everything were getting raised pretty much without limit for a little while. So there was a lot of frustration among the artistic community and many other communities who long had occupied this city. And I think that because of some of the things that I was saying in my lyrics and because the music was very, very aggressive and fast, people found kind of an outlet to dance and push and sing along out their frustrations along with us. So the timing of what we were doing was as important as what we were doing.
I'm interested in creative response. That's what I'm interested in. The world and life perpetually sends us dilemmas, things we need to puzzle over. How do we respond? How can I respond creatively?
I think about things on a big level and wanting to like connect to people. And I like people to feel free. And I like people to take charge of their minds and be unafraid and break down barriers and say what they want to say and do what they want to do. And let's tear the shit down, you know?
And I think that it is the responsibility of the artist to call attention to things that people overlook in a day-to-day context, but also to imagine better situations for everyone, you know, to improve not only your own life, but the lives of others. So it's a little ambitious.
I think all it takes is a little bit of apathy, and we will have corporations running the world in any country. You know, if we allow them. People out there exist who are very, very greedy for money and power, and they don't care about human life. They don't respect people outside of their own family. I know, just to say in America in particular, I think that, you know, I can foresee a future where we're, I don't know, where things could be pretty bleak.
I'm totally American in that regard, because that's exactly why I should be here, because I disagree with most of what's going on. That's sort of like the spirit, the original spirit of America in the first place, is being like this refugee from like other situations. So I don't know, I feel like I have a job to do over here. Oh, here comes some cowboys. Hey-o! Some cowboys. That's America. What the fuck is going on? I think the art from any period finds its peers eventually, even if it's very far after the fact. Like if someone was doing something at the same time that was very similar, they might not ever hear of each other while they're alive, but eventually someone's going to draw up this parallel between this weird person over here and this weird person over here. So, I mean, this is just a journey that a lot of people take. They start out listening to music, and later on they maybe try to play some music and, you know, see what happens.
What I really love is that there'll be some people, like usually kids, but there might be older people, but they're new to their instruments. And they are really influenced by some particular artist, some other musician. So then they start trying to make that music. But the thing is that they are not that person. And their relationship with their instrument is not the relationship that person has with their relationship, or their instrument. So what comes out is quite often something that is almost unrecognizable. But in that's where innovation appears. Like it's when you realize who you are. You know, that's where the difference. That's when somebody finds out like, oh, shit, I've got something of my own. That we inherit the world, and it's our job to give it back. And when we give it back, we should put a spin on it.